Learning from your failures. What's going on, guys? Today continues my series of real talks and things I think are important to share as a dad, especially as a dad that has a close relationship with his son as a single father. So, like, they don't give you lessons when you go to the hospital and have a kid. They don't give you an instruction manual. They don't give you a binder. They don't give you an index of if this happens, do this. Being a parent is all about trial and error. You learn lessons from people around you. You know what's right, you know what's wrong. You either had a great parents growing up, so you had a good example, or you had poor parents growing up, and you learned from that example of what not to be. But being a father is all about trial and error. And I think that as parents, we're gonna fail in things that we do. We're gonna do things the wrong way. We're going to say the wrong things. We're going to react the wrong way. But I think it's important that when we make those kind of mistakes, that we learn from those failures. And I think in life in general, like I say to people, I've learned way more from my failures in life than I have from my successes. Because I feel like when you do successes and people say you're doing everything right, you kind of you don't think you're capable of doing wrong. And I think in failures, I think it's good because it kind of marks a spot in your life where you didn't do things the proper way, and it gives you an education point of being able to kind of mark these times and be aware of them moving forward. So my journey in this is when my son was young and my relationship was ending, kind of at the end when we were kind of at each other's throats, and by the time it was like kind of a toxic relationship, uh, we were arguing and my son was in the room and I raised my voice, and just that little bit of inflection made my son feel scared. And I think in the instant, like when I yelled, I didn't think about the repercussions of what could happen if I yelled. And when I saw that instant reaction on my son's face, it hit me deep because as fathers, we love our kids, and our job as fathers is to protect them, to keep them safe, and to kind of guide them through life. So in that moment when I saw fear on his face, it broke me. Like it broke me to the core, and it's like as soon as I saw that, I got down, I apologized, I hugged him, and even though he wasn't old enough to understand anything I was saying, my hope is that he was able to understand my body language and to realize that I made a mistake. And I think in those moments, I think we learn. And I think, especially as a single father, I kind of had to go through these experiences because when you're in a relationship, you kind of have mom and dad to kind of bounce off each other. And when you're a single dad, like, yeah, your kid is with their mom this part of the time, but when they're with you, you're kind of you're both roles. So you kind of need to have like this balance of like the strict father, the disciplinarian, but you also kind of have to have like this warmer, nurturing part of you. Because I think, again, I don't think one extreme or the other is necessarily good. Like, I don't think you should do total gentle parenting, and I don't think you should do total strict parenting. So as a father, like being able to balance those two and kind of bounce them off each other is like first one, discipline, setting the expectation, determining consequences, and making sure those consequences are known. And the second is being able to teach and grow and learn from those mistakes. So an example of once that happened and I saw what the consequences actions can have in real time, it kind of made me realize in the future that, hey, before you react, you need to take a deep breath and kind of think about what the repercussions and the consequences are of how you're going to react in this moment. And like I think about this, and especially as like being a kid that grew up in like the 90s and 2000s, that like when we were younger, like our goal was to hide things from our parents that wouldn't get us in trouble. It wasn't because we understood that what we were doing was wrong. It's because we wanted to prevent the consequences of being yelled at, of being disciplined. And like back in the 80s, 90s, like that was like prime, like your parents would spank you. And honestly, that doesn't really happen as much anymore. It could, but it's frowned upon. But like we feared the consequences of being found out, and we didn't really necessarily try to keep away from the actions that would get us in trouble. So I think as dads, I think it's important to be able to mark these moments when we realize we failed, because it gives us an opportunity to kind of replay those moments in our head. I'll give an example. So a couple of years ago, around Halloween time, we went to this Halloween pumpkin parade where basically it's like a mile through a park where all these jack o' lanterns are carved and people look at them. And kids have like glow sticks, like the little chemical lights and bands, the little sticks that hang on necklaces. And we get home, my son's playing with it. He's playing in the dark. Turns on the TV to watch Bluey, and he's sitting there in the living room. I'm making popcorn, and he's spinning this thing around in circles and circles and circles. And he swings it so hard that the stick flies off the holder that's on the string, and the chemical light goes straight into the TV, like the blunt narrow part first, and the TV disappears into a dot. And I go out and I see like the shattered spot where it broke the screen. And this is like the most expensive, one of the most expensive TVs. And I looked at the TV, I looked at my son, and he was just like in shock. And like in that moment, he was like so scared of what could have been the consequences. And like in that moment, like I look at the TV and I'm like, I just lost all this money, and I got upset and I was like pissed off. And I took a moment, looked angry, looked up, took a deep breath, and I was like, this moment is gonna be a moment that's gonna define who you are as a father. Right now, I could have the reaction of being angry and upset, and being visually upset and being vocally upset. I was like, but in that moment, I'm gonna strike fear in his eyes, and he's not gonna understand why what he did wrong. He's just gonna understand that what he did made dad angry. And moving forward, like especially my goal as a father is that my son is like emotionally intelligent enough to understand when things are right and when things are wrong, and probably an action he shouldn't be doing because there could be consequences to what he's doing. So like in that moment, like I got angry, and you know I kind of vocalized like why this was wrong, and kind of like saying like these are the consequences. Now we don't have a TV, and like I took the TV out and I put it out in the garage, and we didn't have a TV, and like we went from a 65-inch TV to a small 32-inch TV, and it was on the wall. So we went from this big TV on the wall to this really tiny TV, and it looked ridiculous watching TV after that. But that was like a consequence, and in that moment, I was like, "Listen, I love you. You know it was wrong. I'm upset, but I'm not mad at you." And I think that was a great learning lesson for him because he saw the consequences of his action. Like, and it's the crazy part is like he never broke anything, and the first thing he broke, he picked the most expensive thing that we have in the house. So uh, it's kind of a kind of a funny scenario there. But in that moment, like I could have yelled and he could have been scared, and in the future he could have tried to hide things that he did wrong instead of kind of owning the moment. But in that moment, he was able to understand what he did wrong, and he was able to apply that moving forward. So now, like, there was a time where one of his friends came over, and the kid had like one of those glow sticks, and he's like, "We don't swing those in the living room because we could break the TV." So, like, instead of him just being scared of a potential outburst by me or a reaction, his mind remembered the time that he broke the TV, and he remembered how I talked to him, how I discussed with him, and made him understand what was wrong. So I set the expectation moving forward. I disciplined him by we didn't have a TV for a while, and then when we finally did, kind of giving him like that pep talk. Like, look, we have a new TV. It's not as nice as the old one was, but we need to be able to take care of the things that we have. So we can't do things around them that are going to ruin them. So that's kind of an example of how I move forward, and you know how a failure I had early on in his life kind of taught me how to move forward and do things. So again, you're gonna do things wrong. There's times where you're gonna think like you're a bad father or you're not a good father, and there's moments that where like again I talked in my last video if you want to look right here about like celebrating the successes is like in those moments you're gonna feel like you're doing the wrong thing because you're going to see an emotional response in your kids. And if you've done the work and like you teach your kids right and wrong and what the expectation for things are, like you're going to see them upset, but you're not going to see them have these crazy temper tantrums. And if you can focus in on those moments and you can make those teachable moments, those moments can last them forever and they can understand right and wrong and truly understand why it's right and wrong. Um, Again, going back to like being a 90s, 2000s kid, we avoided being caught because we didn't want the repercussions. But when you set the expectations, your kids will have the opportunity to be able to go through their head and identify what is right and wrong before they even do it. So that's kind of what I want to talk about and kind of want to emphasize to you guys is like, listen, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to make failures, but just make sure you mark those moments and you learn from them because those are the things that are going to kind of raise your level as being a father. Those are the things that are going to stick with your kids. Those are the things that the lessons that they learn that they're going to carry with them when they become fathers. So again, I just want to keep having videos like this where I just kind of talk off the cuff and kind of things I think have made me a better father and hopefully it can help you in your journeys as being fathers. Um, this again, this journey is not easy. I appreciate you guys watching. Again, there's so many videos that don't touch on these kind of topics and subjects, so I want to be that kind of be that voice for you guys and know that there is success in this type of parenting where you can be a disciplinary person, you can set expectations, you can set consequences, and you can use those as teaching tools. And you can also show them love and affection and show them respect so that they turn around and give you respect because they know that they can trust you, that they can come to you, that dad's gonna steer them in the right direction because dad loves me. So if you found this video to be helpful, please like, please share, please subscribe, and please comment below. Please let me know things that you've learned in your journeys. If there's been moments where you kind of overreacted and you acted a certain way and you realized in that moment that that's not what you wanted to be moving forward, please comment that below. I think, again, this is a community where I think that my experiences alone aren't going to be the thing that helps guys. Like it's going to be combined experiences of stories that you guys read below, that you guys add, that's going to help another father become the best version of themselves. So I appreciate you guys watching. May God bless you and your families.